Love podcasts, hate nonsense. It's the PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen. For the listener to get a picture, Ava and I, it's just Ava and I, Ollie's not here, are reclined in the yellow chairs with her feet up on the desk. And when I started clapping, Ava started slapping my foot with her foot. An incredibly relaxed beginning to the podcast.
Okay, we're going to roll the clip, but...
What clip are we doing?
I do think that we should first... What did Laura...
Oh shit, Laura's fucking phoned this in.
You have no idea. Laura's working...
Holy shit. Okay, for the listener, Ava's microphone just collapsed into her torso. But she's fixed it now.
Torso?
Didn't want to say
Tit.
Didn't want to say boob.
Wait, where did she write it? Under which one?
Under clip one. So
it's really hard to read because the printer's not working.
It's a disaster.
So if you can see that, that's what we can see.
Laura transcribed the clip and she's written that Starmer says, "Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll come to that very issue. But I noticed she didn't say shit." Which, as we all know, is very unparliamentary language. Shall we go into that clip so they can hear what the real parliamentary language is?
What has she written on here? Am I missing some notes?
I don't think so.
I've only got... Have you got 3 pieces of paper or 2?
2.
Oh, there's stuff on the back.
We've got the brightest and best.
I'll come to that issue. But I noticed she didn't say shit.
So, shall we talk about what she didn't say shit about?
Go on then.
Roll clip.
Mr. Speaker, I'll come to that very issue, but I noticed she didn't say she was briefed about the Chagos issue. This is important. Mr. Speaker, when she became leader of the opposition, I said to her that I would give her a briefing on any national security issue if she asked for it. That's very important to the way that we run our democracy. She has not asked for a briefing on the Chagos case. And that's because she's more interested in chasing reform than in national security.
Starmer with a broadside attack on Badenoch there, suggesting that she's more interested in chasing reform than she is in national security. I thought the odour of reform was very present in this Prime Minister's question.
Well, they had 2 questions, which of course is substantial considering they have 5 MPs.
40%.
So exactly, That's what I'm saying, brother.
Mm-hmm.
She, interestingly, actually, it was reported a couple of weeks ago during the grooming gangs. Well, the next phase of that scandal, when it was in the public domain and they were calling for a national inquiry. Starmer et al. Invited her to a national security briefing on the Southport murderer. Massacrer? What would you call him? Killer. Anyway, and she didn't turn up. She just sent Chris Philp. So perhaps that's 2 occasions now where she has actually been less interested in national security and more interested in reform.
I think that's a criticism that we kind of make about Badenoch a lot, is what she just goes on whatever. I always say Matt Goodwin, but there are kind of like people of that oeuvre, whatever they've been tweeting about, she then asks about.
Yeah.
And she was asking about Chagos quite a lot.
But she didn't actually ask a question on Chagos, did she?
No,
she just pointed out
Chagos.
Chagos.
She was alluding to it as well. She was alluding to Chagos and alluding to Starmer's voice coach.
But the thing is about Prime Minister's questions is he only has to answer the questions.
Yeah.
So he actually could have just ignored what she had to say about Chagos because she didn't ask anything. She just said, when Labour negotiate, we all lose. And I think she said it 4, maybe 5 times throughout Prime Minister's questions. She's very angry about that £18 billion that's being sent over to the Chagos Islands.
Someone said, I wish I could credit this person, but they said, regardless of what you think about the Chagos independence issue, the £18 billion element of it is just like actually unfathomable. Like if you went to IKEA and bought a chest of drawers and it was £200,000 at the till, you wouldn't be like, oh great, swipe a card. You'd maybe query it. So the suggestion being that like, why is the government happy with that with that figure.
When you put it into perspective as well about what they're potentially going to retrieve through like the private schools VAT ad or the inheritance tax on farmers or taking away the winter fuel payment from pensioners, when those three things are not even enough they don't get anywhere near that £18 billion figure. On those, you're probably looking at about 4.5 billion. And I think when you think about what has been campaigned on over the past couple of years and some of the promises that Labour kind of made before they got into government, things like reparations, which they say the country can't afford to pay, you can see why this would annoy people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a choice, right, where you spend that money. So there's a choice being made here to give it to the Chagos Islands, but they don't have the money to give it to, say, the Caribbean. Or we haven't quite got that yet, but when the infected blood inquiry reaches its like proper conclusion and payments have to be made, or the Horizon scandal, you best believe they're going to say we don't have the money for this right now.
Waspy women as well.
Waspy women. Well, that is a choice. Some people chose to go to work, and some people chose to retire before their date.
Some people read their post.
Some people chose to open their letters. And some people didn't. Chose not to.
Badenoch seems to suggest, I like the line she had early in this exchange, where she said, he's doing this to impress lefty lawyers in North London. But I think like an interesting tension in using Chagos as like a stick with which to beat the government is that nobody knows a thing about it. So if Starmer goes to one of his lefty lawyer dinner parties and is like, "You'll never guess, lads, great news, I've given Chagos back to Mauritius." Yeah. They'd be like, what's the Chagos?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's a military base and it's a national security risk if I don't.
We're getting to keep it.
We're getting to keep the base.
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, speaking of choice in how we spend the public purse.
Yes.
I was absolutely incensed before I came to this.
This is your points of view.
So this started at, I'd seen that Luke Akehurst, who's a Labour MP, had charged £1.55 in expenses for milk.
To his constituency office, which is a place of work.
Okay, and it really annoyed me because I was like, £1.55? Like, could you not have just swallowed that cost? Or could you not have just been... It would cost more in time to submit that expense than it would be to just swallow the £1.50. It annoyed me. And these people aren't impoverished, all right? They're earning a 90k salary. And he might have been a shadow minister at the time. No, he might not have been.
He's not been a shadow minister.
Has he not? All right, okay. Well then, sorry. But it's 90k. And bearing in mind, you could also get your rent paid for if you need to live in London and you live far away. I just thought it was taking the Michael. Now, then I stumbled across this guy. This guy loves spending your money, folks. Let me tell you, if you ever heard this guy complain about how Labour spends its cash, bring this up to him. Former Conservative MP Ian Liddle-Granger has filed expenses for a £1,887 iPad and case, a nearly £5,000 desktop, a £600 shredder. I wasn't that familiar with shredders, so I had a quick look. You do not need to spend £600. An absolute, like, a box office shredder, £300. Your standard one you have in your home, £20. £849 on another iPad and £300 on setting up his laptop. You all paid for that. You paid for that. Yeah, yes, please.
I think it's fine for people at work to buy good quality equipment for work.
You do not need an £1,887 iPad. I actually would struggle, I think, to go into Apple and find an iPad for that amount of money. Like, okay, so what are they actually using this for? Because that sort of level of iPad, if you were going to buy like a real, like, high spec one, presumably you're like a graphic designer. If you're using it to do like constituency emails on, what the hell do you need that for?
Well, it's multi-purpose, right? It could be someone who, they might have like a social media person.
Right, well, let's go on his page then and let's see if...
I think it's fine to have. And also there's the argument about like if you buy something extremely high quality, you only need to buy it once, versus if you buy a £20 shredder, that probably breaks in 6 months.
Explain this to me, Ed. those expenses were filed in the year 2024 to 2025. So he knew he was potentially leaving office at the end in July. Let's give him some grace. It could have been October, it could have been November. Maximum for a year. Why would you need such a high-spec iPad?
Because he's an optimist.
You could literally go on back market and buy one for like 100 quid.
He was going for 3 terms of Rishi Sunak.
And where is all of that stuff now? That's what annoys me.
That's yeah.
If there was a library where they could clean it out, put it into the House of Commons and be like, right, this is now open because the taxpayer paid for it. Everyone else can now just come and take what they need. I would be much more okay with it.
I wonder if he liaises with his successor and is like, we have this shredder, by the way, that the state owns.
Yeah, by the way, it's £600. You could literally shred a body with it. It's so good. Like, that thing must have munched on paper like nothing you've ever seen before. Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Imagine if you got your fingers in that.
Oh, no. You know, I chopped off a bit of my finger the other night.
Yeah? In a shredder?
No, I was chopping vegetables and I cut off a bit of my nail. The milk,
have you ever seen the film Teeth?
That's the film where a lady has teeth in her vagina.
So you have seen it?
No, I've just heard about it, actually. I don't really want to see it.
It's pretty much the entire film.
Does it go bad? Does it go wrong for the men who sleep there?
No, yeah, she uses it for good. What do you mean?
What would using it for good look like?
She actually lives in a care home and she chews up all the old people's food for them.
And she puts a gum shield in to have sex with them. She's very efficient. That's the kind of government efficiency you would like. She'd chew with her actual mouth, chew with her downstairs mouth. Double the rate.
She chews with her downstairs because she doesn't have any teeth.
Got you. Does she have actual teeth in the film? Does she have mouth teeth?
Excuse me. Someone back there. Does she have actual teeth?
I've not seen the film.
Oh.
Oh, film boys let us down. I also, for the record, think it's fine for Luke Akehurst to expense milk for his constituency office. He's paid a lot of money. His staff aren't. I'm not sure you should be. He's not like. He's not the owner of the company. He shouldn't be expected to provide like office supplies necessarily.
A pint of milk. £1.55 as well. What was it? Cravendale.
It just said milk. It could be multiple bottles.
Triple filtered milk.
It could
was
be
it?
what you would
breast milk.
You'd like,
was it?
Okay, if it's breast milk, then we have a problem. Because that probably should be worth way more.
Breast milk on the taxpayer?
You're exploiting a vulnerable single young mother taking her breast milk
Yeah,
for
with teeth in her vagina.
Well, I feel we've strayed. I fear it. Shall we roll another clip?
Mr. Akehurst, this milk is sour once again. No.
No, it's fine. It's fine. That's my milk. That's my milk.
That's my milk.
Hands off. Sorry, Mr. Akehurst, I can't find any. There's no room in the fridge for my lunch. I noticed you filled it with 18 bottles of Luke's special milk.
What's his name is in the comment section of the Plymouth Herald going, did you purchase my wife's breast milk?
Everyone be on the lookout for the next drop of MP's expenses. If Luke Akehurst has spent... What's 18 times £1.50?
What's what?
18, £27. If you spent £27 on milk, then we know something's gone horribly wrong.
If he spent 20... What's the time frame?
What a dreadful joke we've just come up with.
Do you think... I bet there's someone nerdy on here who can do us a tracker. Can someone go and set up a notification for Luke's milk? Luke Akehurst's milk consumption.
Luke Akehurst arrives into his constituency office, says bitty, and sits down.
Isn't he like a very serious military man as well?
No.
Oh, is he not? Naval man?
Don't think so. Luke Akehurst is the one...
Cadets?
He's got red hair?
Luke Akehurst?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No?
Hang on. I might have like horribly imagined...
I'm trying to think who you're thinking of.
Can I just say, I am so distracted today because I obviously went on here to look up Luke Akehurst and instead I just started reading my texts. Sorry. Yeah, it's this guy. Yeah, that's not who I thought it... Yeah, okay.
Am I right?
This is not who I thought it was.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
I was thinking of Luke Pollard.
Yes, Luke Pollard is in the military.
Military
Was
man.
in the military.
Should we go and... Someone should go and check. Does Luke expense breast milk?
Ask, FOI, how much money have MPs spent on procuring breast milk?
For the office.
Shall we...
What you do in your free time is up to you.
Absolutely. Communal breast milk. Oh, share. Look. Share.
Who's drank my breast milk?
Oi, this is only £1.10. Give me that back. Oh, shall we have another clip?
Yeah.
Roll the clip.
For Clacton says that his party is, and I quote, open to anything when it comes to changing our NHS and open to an insurance-based system. So can my right honourable friend confirm that under a Labour government, the NHS will be there for everyone when they need it, not having to worry about the bill?
This is interesting that Labour have kind of identified healthcare as a dividing line, or that's their stick with which to beat reform, because like there's a tension right between potential reform voters and their preferred policies and what reform would potentially enact, in that their voters are probably more socially conservative, but probably quite in favour of state-backed, state-run services, nationalisation, National Health Service.
That should be a really interesting question, wouldn't it? The next reform thing I go to ask them what they think about, because conservative meetups, they are actually in favour of an insurance-based model. It'd be interesting to see about reform voters.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I think there is a difference between someone who's signed up and gone to like a reform event versus like the average, like what would you call a potential reform voter? Like someone in Canvey Island, say, like just like someone who's not going to. Well, I think that's fair enough, isn't it? Socially conservative.
It's funny.
But like someone in like Canvey, that's probably somewhere that reform would quite like to get their teeth into. Though I think the people there are probably quite in favour of a publicly owned NHS.
Yeah, but one that runs is probably what they would say. God, it would be a really boring Vox now that we've talked
it'd be
about it,
a dreadful Vox idea.
You definitely get all of the... Yeah, so the NHS is our second religion, right, in the UK. And everyone loves to complain about how they can't get a GP appointment. But the solution is never, ever an insurance-based model. As it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Don't you start commenting that I want an insurance-based NHS, because I don't.
And it's also, and Farage has been talking about he's open to any model of the NHS. So for him to say that this isn't the case is not true.
There was a really interesting time during the tail end of Boris Johnson's Conservative administration where the back door was looking open to private healthcare. Which was really, I forgot how close. We were almost like 5 to midnight on that. I don't know if they were like openly discussing it, but he was definitely, there was some, not him necessarily, but there were some meetings going on. There was a big procurement of a site in Birmingham, a private healthcare company.
Yeah.
Do you remember all of this?
I do remember this.
And do you remember when Andrew Marr interviewed Woody Johnson, who was the American ambassador, and he said to him, like, US-UK trade deal, nothing would be off the table? And he was like, nothing, even healthcare, it's on the table.
Yep.
They want to flood the market with like Pfizer and all of that, you know.
Yeah. I know, and I wonder if that is a toxic enough, is toxic the wrong word? Unpopular enough take on the health service as to be an effective line.
Word.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah, let's say toxic. Have we decided on toxic together?
Unfavourable? I don't know.
Unfavourable.
Yeah.
Unpopular. But do you think that will...
Unseemly, unpaltry.
Unpalatable.
Unpalatable.
Do you think this will be unpalatable enough to the British public, some people who might be reform curious, to wrench them away from it?
I mean, you think about like Chapel Roan at the Grammys. In her speech, her acceptance speech for her Grammy, she asked record companies who tender contracts to recording artists to please provide them healthcare, because you'll be somewhat of a de facto employee, but you don't have any healthcare.
Yep.
Imagine that the UK was in a situation like that. You're not in work, so you don't have healthcare.
It'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like the old joke about like Breaking Bad doesn't happen if it happens in Europe. I'm aware it's fictional.
And it's like if Luigi Mangione had done it, you know, you can sort of understand why he was upset.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It's so crazy that you can have your claim just denied. I suppose sometimes the NHS does deny you treatment as well. You read about that girl the other week who, we're really going off a tangent here, but it is actually extraordinary how often young women are turned away from hospital. She had been prescribed some kind of medication, and she said, I'm already on the birth control pill. And they were like, oh, well, you are actually at higher risk now, so just keep it monitored. She got a blood clot because that can happen. But birth control is like, you know, when everyone was worried about like the COVID injection giving you blood clots, wait till you find out about birth control.
Yeah.
She went to hospital. She literally died 3 days later.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I do think the men don't really understand the physical risks of female contraception. Or aren't as cognizant of it, I would say.
Yeah, but you lot will put your dick in anything. So, like, you don't, without really assessing risk, you know?
No, but... Yeah, but I suppose... But
how do you think that film Teeth came about?
that's contraception.
You look at it and they go, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, but still, wrap it up, pal. She might have a non-teeth-based infection.
Yeah.
No, she might have something else. I think
she might have something else.
She might. You might have something else. I don't know.
Thank you.
I think one might have something else. I think it's important to advocate safe sex to our audience.
One person might have something else.
One person might have. You should, if you're having sex with someone for the first time or a casual partner, I think you probably should wear a condom. Should we have another clip?
Clit.
Another clit, please.
Mr. Speaker, turning to foreign policy now. Last night, many of us were alarmed to hear President Trump speak about forcibly displacing 1.8 million people from Gaza. The Prime Minister has spoken to the President on several occasions now. Does he personally believe that Trump recognises the dangers of statements like this to the fragile ceasefire in Gaza, and indeed to the security of both Palestinians and Israelis? I'm glad that the Foreign Secretary has confirmed that the government's position is still a two-state solution. I think that has support on all sides of the House. But will he reassure the House that this position and our concerns on these dangerous statements from the President will be communicated to the White House directly and firmly?
Yeah. Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you raised a very important issue. The most important issue on the ceasefire is obviously it's sustained. We see it through the phases, and that means that the remaining hostages come out and the aid that's desperately needed gets into Gaza at speed and at the volumes that are needed. I have, from the last few weeks, two images fixed in my mind. The first is the image of Emily Damari reunited with her mother, which I found extremely moving. The second was the image of thousands of Palestinians literally walking through the rubble to try to find their homes and their communities in Gaza. They must be allowed home. They must be allowed to rebuild, and we should be with them in that rebuild on the way to a two-state solution.
I found this clip enraging because he did not answer the question that was posed to him. The question was, Donald Trump, the leader of the free world, yesterday said that they should clear out Gaza and those people should be resettled, which has been a lot of this. If you're just joining us, that has been the argument for quite a significant amount of time. And he's had Netanyahu round to his house last night, and Netanyahu's been like, really nice seafront on Gaza. Move them? And Trump's like,
interesting.
Oh, yeah, well, golf course would be fantastic here. Whatever. It's so important because that is the entire conflict summed up in what Donald Trump said yesterday. And Starmer's answer today was, we need to release the hostages and we need to get aid into Gaza. You were asked specifically by Ed Davey, what will you tell the White House? Will you tell the White House that is ethnic cleansing? That cannot happen. And he's like, let me just give you something vague. So if you don't know what we're talking about, this was last night. Trump was at a press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu, and this is what he said.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
So there you go. The only reason Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. Well, I mean, it's really missing the mark, isn't it? It really is sort of like, this is sort of my understanding of the conflict. You know, this is why I don't talk about foreign affairs.
Demolition site sounds like a construction site.
Yeah, it does. But what was interesting was when he was talking about Gaza in the sense of a Riviera or being a waterfront property, right? So Laura spoke to Sarah Champion, the Labour MP, last week, and she actually predicted this. Mm-hmm. She actually said he's looking at this as a realtor. Just listen to that.
I mean, he's looking at this as a realtor. You know, this is clear what he's angling for here. The fact that his son-in-law increased his shares in settlements. This is something we all need to be very mindful of and very aware of. And yes, it inflames a situation. So I don't know what you do about a situation like that other than call it out every single time you hear it.
Okay, so if you want to hear more of that, the full interview is on our YouTube.
I wonder what if the red line will be for Starmer with Trump. Because you think there surely has to be a moment where on the diplomatic stage you can be a responsible diplomatic partner and say, cut it out. Surely there has to be a tipping point where he says something so unpalatable. You'd like to think this is beyond the pale, beyond the threshold. But it's. I suppose this is the whole thing of Trump, isn't it? He says the unsayable. He redefines geopolitics at a whim. And so he pushes the limit. And now we're all just kind of kowtowing to him.
I'm deeply concerned that Starmer, because they're very close, have you seen the reports? They're very close to securing a US-UK trade deal. And that's something that the Conservatives were so desperate to do. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned that Starmer could be sucked into that trap of being so overly ideological that he's like, yeah, at any cost, we will do this trade deal. Mm-hmm. At any cost. Gaza goes at the real stark end of that. Chlorinated chicken is allowed into the United Kingdom. We're going to take American cars. We're going to renege on our climate commitments to match you and Musk.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I hear what you're saying. Like, at what point does he say no more? I mean, you should have a prepared answer for that today.
100%.
You should have a prepared answer, which is Britain, the United Kingdom, does not believe that Palestinians should be relocated from Gaza. Yeah. And there's all this talk in the US at the moment as well. Some of the things, it's like people have just entered the chat. They're saying things like, well, the Middle East, a lot of countries in the Middle East have a responsibility to take in these people from the Gaza Strip. And it's like, that's not the row.
Yeah.
The row is that's where they're allowed to be.
Yeah, so
allowed to be. That's a terrible phrasing of word. That's where they should be.
Where they should be. It's just a moral thing, also, isn't it? He just doesn't seem to have the moral backbone to stand up and say something as black and white as that. Is that he thinks Palestinians should be in Palestine?
Yeah.
If you're not prepared to do, and also, well, this isn't like. There is a question about how much is this. How much does Trump mean this, right? And I suppose the danger is if you don't take it seriously, and this is actually his grand plan for the Middle East, then you're like one or two steps behind, and you're blindsided. So I suppose you do have to take everything he says quite seriously, sort of just in case. But this is like, it's not about the territory. It's about a commercial opportunity for the United States. It's not even about like.
There's no way he'd actually turn it into a waterfront or a Riviera. That's what he was.
Imagine how sick you'd have to be to go. Like, if they opened up like Trump Resort, well, they probably wouldn't call it Gaza, but like whatever, Trump Resort on the beaches of.
Well,
Palestine.
I think that would be the problem is if they don't call it Gaza, right? Which is sort of what he was arguing for yesterday.
Yeah, but like whatever. But imagine how sick he has been going on a beach holiday to these places. But then if people go to like Dubai and all these places which have pretty awful human rights violations.
Yeah. Well, we're not really innocent for any of that, though, are we?
No,
we just did ours a bit earlier on.
No, I know that it's like we're not innocent, but like, you have to be kind of a sick fuck to go and lie on a sun lounger.
Here we go. You've heard it here
Rafa.
first. You're a sick fuck if you've gone to Dubai.
Yeah, maybe you are. I've been to Dubai. Maybe I'm a sick fuck.
Anyway, I'll be talking to Stephen Flynn about that later. And Sean, who are you talking to again? Ilan Pape.
Nice.
He'll be on. Yeah. So are we going to bolt it onto this podcast? Probably not. Separate podcast, I reckon.
Could be Friday's podcast.
Well, anyway, you'll hear it at some point.
Yeah. Nice. Next clip.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I can assure the honourable member for Rugby that Reform want healthcare to be free at the point of delivery. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. There appears to be some panic on that side of the House. I'm not surprised. To ask the Prime Minister, I'd like some advice, please. What do I say? Oh, they really are panicking, aren't they?
Order. I want to get this question over with. All you're doing is ensuring it goes on forever. Quick question.
To ask the Prime Minister for some advice, what do I say to 25,000 constituents in Clacton, including...
Either get on. No, you've got it. No, we're not both standing at the same. Look, I need a quick question, then I can get you the answer. Come on.
What do I say, Prime Minister, to 25,000 constituents in Clacton, including 99-year-old Jim O'Dwyer, who flew a full set of missions on Lancaster bombers as tail end Charlie, as they're losing their winter fuel allowance, feeling the pinch, whilst at the same time we're prepared to give away a military base and pay £18 billion for the privilege of doing so.
Mr. Speaker, he talks of panic. The only panic is people using the NHS who know that under his policy he wants to charge them for using the NHS. And what he should say to the people of Clacton when he finally finds Clacton is that they should vote Labour because we're stabilising the economy and boosting the Germans.
There's two things there. The reaction from Labour to Farage standing up and using the opportunity to answer a question about himself, and I think they need to be a bit savvier and not lose their temper. That should have been a 30-second clip, right? 30-second question of him asking a question.
Yeah, they gifted him.
Yeah, he was allowed to stand there like this, essentially, like come ahead, and they gave him that opportunity. Then also that was like a by the numbers question. That was like textbook question. So he managed to talk about World War II, old people, Chagos, the winter fuel allowance.
Tick, tick, tick.
If you're Badenoch, you should be looking at that and going like, what's he done there? What's he done there? Because it was really simple, but I think that's really effective. Like, can you please tell my constituents why you're cutting winter fuel payment and giving Mauritius £18 billion? You get right to the heart of it.
This is literally what we were saying earlier, isn't it? Because it's like, how... They're going to come for me. But this is the question. How do you make that rational point And I actually think that Labour have been rather coy at their answer, because Starmer almost appears a little bit sneering in his answer to the early questions from Badenoch, where she's like, £18 billion for the Chagos Islands. And he's like, it's actually a national security issue. And it's like, well, can you tell us why it's a national security issue so that we understand why that money is going there? Because as he's saying there, it's like, when I'm door knocking in Clacton, this is a gift to him. Farage just stands there and goes, can you believe it? Your house is cold right now, but Mauritius, very nice this time of year, £18 billion.
Yeah, I think as well, it's the danger of no one having heard of Chagos Islands before this row. It's also yet to be seen, I suppose, whether this has had much cut through, I suppose. But if the first you are hearing about this is that the government are sending £18 billion to this place that you don't know, and your gran is not getting her winter fuel allowance, it's crap communications. They should have had a much better handle than this, and they're allowing Farage to turn this into his own issue. Like, he's managed to turn farmers' tax into his own issue. He's very, very good at this. He's like a limpet. He clings on to any issue he can sink his teeth into.
Teeth again, eh?
Yeah.
This really has been the episode of teeth.
He uses his fanged vagina and squats over any issue.
But it is true, I mean, isn't it? It's open goal. And I think that taking the sort of moral high ground of, look, you could explain this so easily to the British people, and I still don't actually know if this is, I'm just thinking from a common perspective, I don't know if this is true or not, but what you could say is, Bay of Pigs, Cuba, missiles, that's Chagos.
Right, sorry, can you talk me through that?
Nope.
No, okay. I think it's what you point about.
But I don't even know if that's true. But I'd like him to tell us.
What if it's a
I'd like him to tell us. Is it actually a strategic base that we need for our national security? Because he said our national security, and then he corrected himself and said national security.
Right.
So it's like, okay, but what is it? You actually do need to just tell us what is it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be just expected to know. Or, like, do you really think that we're all sitting down at the pub going, well, of course,
for national security issues,
we need to have that military base?
Absolutely, yeah. I think he kind of treats the public almost as stupid in the way that he avoids questions, and he's like, well, I have very good reasoning, and he doesn't quite explain itself. I think there was during the comments about the Ofsted, like they're changing how Ofsted review schools, and there was a comment that maybe some of the new categories would be hard for parents to understand.
Yeah.
And Bridget Phillipson was like, well, that's incredibly patronising. It's like 2 or 3 words. I'm sure they're perfectly capable of understanding what this means. And I think maybe more of that attitude should be done with the government towards the British public.
They're going to do an Ofsted rating system for issues of national security so that we can understand.
Or they should at least try and explain. I do think
this goes back to a lot of how even stuff with Brexit, where people didn't actually spend enough time, Remainers didn't spend enough time explaining what would happen if we left the European Union, and instead they just assumed that everyone should know that, oh, well, people will know what will happen. It's like, no, you actually need to tell us. Because why on earth would we have... The whole point, right, of having like a military base, if something's under MOD, you don't tell us about it. You should let us in.
Yep.
That kind of taking it feels a little bit like contempt. Treating us with contempt.
A little bit. Should we leave it there?
I think we should, Albin.
Excellent.
Do we clap it out again?
Yeah, okay. Assume the position. Thanks everyone for listening.
See you on subreddit.